The question is, if the translations have a Judeo-Christian interpretation, how do we resolve that? I'm going to say that even the people who've never read any Gurbani in English and have only read Gurbani in its original language still have a Judeo-Christian understanding, because they're still pointing up when they're talking about Paramatma. So your question is, how do we address that? On a superficial level, I would say that the way to address it is to learn Gurbani and read Gurbani in its original language. But that doesn't solve the problem. The way to solve the problem is to start learning Sikhi by learning the historic spiritual traditions that predated Sikhi. And that's where I'm going to say something that most people will find controversial. I say you must study Hinduism. You must study the Veds. You must study the Upanishads. You must read the Bhagavad Gita. You must understand that way of thinking out of which where Gurbani was written by the people who understood that way of thinking. The language that the Guru uses are those languages, not the Judeo-Christian languages, not there is one God and there is a heaven and there is a hell and He is the Father and all those sorts of way of thinking. That's the Judeo-Christian way of thinking that we've now inherited because we don't study any of the ancient wisdom traditions. We say, only read Guru Granth Sahib, don't read anything else. I personally disagree with that way of thinking. I've benefited massively from reading Ashtavakra Gita, from reading about Advaita Vedanta, from reading Swami Shankaracharya, from reading about the Bhagavad Gita. My understanding of Gurbani has gone through the roof when I understood some of these things. And I'm not saying I'm an expert on any of these things. But the amount of Bani that you understand from understanding the Vedic traditions is very important. And all of our traditions were studying all of these books. If you look at Damdami Taksal, they'll say that before you pick up Guru Granth Sahib Ji, there are 9 other Granths that you must read first. And these are some of these other traditions. Most of our Sampradaya traditions tell you that you have to read these things. The Nirmalas, the Udasis, they were all originally reading other traditions and understanding Bani from those traditions. I think it's only the Singh Sabha mentality that actually got rid of all of that stuff. And this is where it becomes quite difficult because most people are not necessarily willing to have these conversations. Most people are not willing to understand that the Singh Sabha tradition is a Judeo-Christian tradition, is a British-inspired tradition. Not to say that everything that they did was wrong, but the way of getting rid of all of the old ancient knowledge means you get rid of the old ancient way of interpreting Gurbani. And a lot of what now I'm going to say something else, and this is where I can get in trouble. A lot of what Gurbani says has also been said in some of these ancient traditions. People don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that these things actually have similarity. But only when you go and read a lot of these other traditions, you'll see a lot of Gurbani is in there. It's not to say that Gurbani doesn't have anything unique. Gurbani does have a lot of unique things as well. Your question was, how do you break Judeo-Christian thinking? You need to study non-Judeo-Christian spirituality in order to understand what context Gurbani is talking about. Firstly, read Gurbani in its original language. Secondly, read some of the older traditions that were out there. Some of them are very complementary to Gurbani, some of them are not. But understand all of them in order to understand non-Judeo-Christian spirituality, which is what Gurbani is.